Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, on today's episode, we are doing the top 10 dungeon crawls and top 10 adventure games, but the runners up. Both of these categories are just jammed full of awesome games, especially the adventure game category. I could do another top 10, another top 20 of games that I absolutely love. The runners up in the adventure game category, I love all of those games, and some of them it was so hard to not put them on the top 10. And the same goes for the dungeon crawl list as well. But there aren't quite as many dungeon crawls that I love as much as the other adventure games. I think it's just a slightly smaller subset of of my collection of the games that I've played. But let's start with the dungeon crawls here. So there were a few big games that were noticeably left off my top 10. And I think one of the ones that I got the most comments on was, of course, Shadows of Brimstone. And that's from 2014 and, of course, from Flying Frog Productions. And we will be hearing about Flying Frog Productions later on in this video as well. But yeah, Shadows of Brimstone. I love the game. It's great. I have a nearly 40-part video series on the channel devoted to Shadows of Brimstone. It takes up a huge number of shelves. Actually, I've boxed up a lot of my Shadows of Brimstone stuff and kind of put it into storage just because I'm not using it right now, but I don't want to sell it. I probably will never sell my whole collection. My friends and I, we're playing through the Gates of Valhalla right now, and we are having a great time with that. We have, I think, 2 more missions, and then we're going to switch to something else. I think we're going to switch to Ultimate Tanaris Adventures for a while and see how that goes. But yeah, I really like Shadows of Brimstone. It's really hard to play solo for me just because of how much stuff there is. And when I do play it solo now, I do play that kind of hybrid solo RPG kind of hack that I've made of Shadows of Brimstone, and it works really well. So I don't need all of the stuff around me to play it. But it's just not a game that I turn to solo. And you're going to see this as a trend in this video today, especially with these big dungeon crawls, is the nature of the channel prevents me from spending a lot of time with a single game. I don't often have the luxury to keep something big and epic set up on a table. Sometimes I can keep something set up for an extended period of time out in the kitchen, but because of the nature of YouTube, I have to constantly be talking about different things. And the numbers are there almost always, but not always. When I do a series of videos, the first video in that series will do really well, but then there's significant drop off. And so if I'm looking to pay some of my bills by doing YouTube, I can't be focusing on the same game all the time. And so it just prevents me from playing a lot of these big games that I would actually like to spend more time on. And speaking of those, so that was Shadows of Brimstone. So yeah, great game. I still absolutely love it. I still have so much fun with it. It's just not a game that I play often enough to include in a top 10. Speaking of that, I would say coming up after that would be League of Dungeoneers. Right after I finish this video, I'm going to be doing a big unboxing and look at some of the new stuff that is coming in, the new expansion. League of Dungeoneers is fantastic. I did think that there were enough issues with the rulebook. The errata was significant enough. There were enough errors in that game to keep it off of a top 10 for me personally. That game was fantastic, but it was really messy in the state that it was released in that first edition. The second edition looks much better, and I'm hoping that Michael fixed all of the errors and addressed all of the errata and included those. I know there's an update pack. And yeah, League of Dungeoneers is a very good game. It just needs to get to that kind of, it needs to be perfected. And I'm looking forward to spending more time with that game. I am looking forward to developing my own way to play it with only one hero and one companion. I don't like playing all 4 heroes in that game. I don't even like playing 2 full heroes and 2 companions. It's just a lot. There's a lot to keep track of in that game. But League of Dungeoneers. Out of all of the Warhammer Quest derivatives, and we'll look at one more. Shadows of Brimstone is also a Warhammer Quest derivative, but out of all of them, it gets the closest, and it might be the game to actually take the crown from Warhammer Quest for that particular style of game, for a modern game. You don't need to go to eBay anymore and spend many hundreds, almost thousands of dollars for a Warhammer Quest collection. You can go and get League of Dungeoneers, and Michael does want to make it more available for people to buy off of his website. But I love the questing system. I love how many quests there are. I love the standees. I love all of the cards, all of the encounters. I love the big open world hex map. And I'm really looking forward to diving into it and kind of customizing it to be more of a solo RPG style game, less tactical. But League of Dungeoneers has a lot going for it. It has a really bright future, and I am excited to be able to spend more time with it, especially that second edition, that updated world book. Oh man, it looks so nice, and I think people are going to be very happy with where that game is now. And let's see, the final of the big Warhammer Quest derivatives, of course, is Darklight Memento Mori. And that is, League of Dungeoneers was from 2022, Von Browse Publishing, and Darklight Memento Mori, 2018, Dark Ice Games. Darklight is a really cool game. It's very brutal. Your characters will die quickly, but it also is just Warhammer Quest with a different skin. I mean, really, it is Warhammer Quest with a different skin. The monsters are cool. The characters are cool. I don't really like the campaign system in that game. The way that it worked, the campaign missions were just way too difficult to progress through. We just kept dying over and over again. It was very brutal, but the kind of random questing mode is great. The overland travel, the traveling from one settlement to the dungeon is fantastic. I love all of the travel cards. I love games where you get to travel outside the dungeon and just kind of connect the dots between the different dungeons. That's really cool. The game is kind of a dead game. There were never any expansions for it. That could be good or bad, depending on how you feel. I know that the designer Morrow is working on a new game, a new dungeon crawl. It's not related in as far as the mechanisms go. I don't think it's related to Darklight. I don't think you will be able to use stuff from one and another. It's a whole new system, a whole new game. And I know one of the issues with Darklight was they went really big on the minis. The minis are giant and very large scale minis, and everything had to be bigger because of that. And the production costs were just so much. And I don't think they were able to even entertain the idea of keeping it in print. So I'm hoping with this new game, I'm hoping they're kind of narrowing down their component scope a little bit so the game can have a longer tail and have more time to even get the fans interested in it and creating fan content and that kind of thing. So yeah, Darklight Memento Mori, great. The three big Warhammer Quest derivatives, Shadows of Brimstone, Darklight Memento Mori, League of Dungeoneers, all great games, all games that I still love. I just don't play them enough. They don't fit in my life enough to be on a top 10. The other really big game that was missing, of course, is Dungeon Universalis. And that's from 2019, and that's Ludic Dragon Games. This game is another huge, fantastic game. Just the idea that we are living through this gaming time where we have games like Shadows of Brimstone, Darklight Memento Mori, League of Dungeoneers, and Dungeon Universalis all somewhat available to us, that is insane. League of Dungeoneers is such a passion project from Oscar and his team. I'm going to be interviewing them soon on some new stuff that they have coming. I know back when the game first came out and I was talking to him, he wasn't sure if they were even going to keep the game in print. When it first delivered, he was thinking that maybe it was going to be a one and done thing, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I think this game is such a success that they're going to continue to evolve it. They just came out with a brand new expansion. It has a whole new quest book, all kinds of new tiles, and the new tiles look fantastic. A whole new bestiary. The game is super expansive. I do wish that there was just a random quest / random dungeon generation mode in the box. And that's why the game didn't make my top 10. Again, it's that campaign system. I just don't have the time to play through the campaigns. But I would really like to play through a series of games where I can just keep my character from one game to the next and not have to worry about all the connective tissue in that campaign, because the campaign system in Dune is pretty complex. There are things to keep track of as you're moving around that overland map. But yeah, it's also a very complex game, past probably my capacity to really learn all of it. There are a ton of rules. It's very tactical. There are a lot of bonuses and modifiers and things you have to keep track of at every single section in that game. It's just overflowing with rules. And so when I do play it, I do highly modify it. I leave stuff out. I don't worry about things. But that's the same with League of Dungeoneers as well. Is that I play simplified versions. I play versions that fit with what I am capable of remembering from one turn to the next. So that was Dungeon Universalis. Okay, and next up is a game that I almost put on. Almost, I was so close, but I play this with so many house rules that it barely feels like I'm actually playing the game, and that is Hero Quest. And if you would have asked me 5 years ago if I would have loved Hero Quest as much as I do right now, I would have said you were crazy. Because I'm not a fan of the game out of the box. I don't like one versus many games. I think the loot's pretty boring. I think the heroes are pretty boring. I think the moment-to-moment gameplay is rather dull in Hero Quest. However, Hero Quest as a game system, as a foundation upon which to build, is fantastic because it's so simple. And there have been so many great fan supplements created over the many, many years that people have devoted their lives to Hero Quest. And now people like us, people like me, get to reap those benefits, right? And so we have the Axion Quest stuff, and the Axion Quest is just, oh, it's perfection. This is the way that I want all of my dungeon crawls to be, where I can very, very quickly generate a random scenario, a random dungeon crawl. I can take my characters that I've played multiple games with and just go in random dungeons. I love it. And then there are the Mega Quest cards that we've taken a look at that you can expand your hero even more. There are the cool solo supplement from Tristan Hall, the designer of Shadows and Gloom of Kilforth. Those are really cool. There is that whole Hero Quest roleplay book that kind of pushes Hero Quest into the realms of Warhammer Quest. There is so much cool stuff for Hero Quest, and playing it is a lot of fun. And because of the base system is so simple, it's really easy to get into and it's really easy to modify. So I guess I could have included the Hero Quest game system on my list. I don't know. I modify it so much that I struggled with putting it in my top 10, but I love playing that game now with all of that stuff. And of course, that I'm talking about the new version. So I have the old version from 1989, and that was from Milton Bradley and Games Workshop. And then, of course, the new one now is from Avalon Hill and Hasbro. And I think the new one is brilliant. I see no reason to go and spend all of those hundreds of dollars to buy the vintage sets anymore. Just stop buying vintage Hero Quest. The new stuff is just as good. In 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we will be looking back. People today who are playing the game today will be looking back on this new version of Hero Quest and going, "Oh man, I love that vintage art." Yeah, the art is good, guys. It doesn't need to be that black and white style for it to be a good game. And see, coming up next is from 2019 from Mantic Games, and that is Hellboy. Hellboy right there. Hellboy, fantastic game. Love it. From James Hewitt, of course, the designer of a dungeon crawl. Another dungeon crawl in my top 10, which was Warhammer Quest Silver Tower. Hellboy kind of takes that modern Warhammer Quest style. There are seeds that were planted in Silver Tower that bore the fruit of Hellboy. And I love that it has a random quest generator. I love the dice system. I like the characters. I like the world of Hellboy a lot. It's a really interesting world to play in. And I think the game does a good job of simulating the action scenes from the comic book. It feels like that. I like the card system for how you put together the scenarios. Yeah, it's just a fantastic game. There is one big kind of caveat where there's a huge discrepancy between the retail version and the deluxe Kickstarter version. Huge discrepancy. That is a game that I do not recommend the retail version at all. However, I highly recommend the Kickstarter version. That's a really unfortunate thing. But I mean, if you got the retail version, you would have to also buy quite a few expansions, I think, to bring it up to a respectable level. I know there are people that like the retail version as it is, and I'm not trying to disparage those people at all. And if you like it, that's great. I'm really happy for you. But for me, I think I would have gotten bored of the retail version pretty quickly. But then again, maybe I'm a hypocrite because I haven't actually played all the content in the one that I do have. So maybe the retail version is enough. But the retail version didn't come with those random quest modes, and that's the thing that I like. So that is Hellboy. Okay, coming up next is Space Cadets Away Missions, 2015 from Stronghold Games. One of the sci-fi dungeon crawls, and yeah, Space Cadets, super fun. That kind of ray punk, that laser punk, 50s atomic punk style, with spacemen and spacesuits going in flying saucers and fighting little green men from outer space. And it has a great combat system with, I think it's called the overkill system, where if you roll more successes than you need, you get to choose how to use those successes and how to apply those critical hits and do interesting things. Fantastic. The setup is a little long, but it provides a lot of variety. I think there are over 20 different scenarios, and you just play one-off scenarios in the game, so that's great. The theme is cool. It's really quick to play. It's easy to learn. I think all of the loot and the characters are interesting. The enemies are pretty interesting. They have different powers. The enemies have different things that they can do with their overkill, their multiple successes. So yeah, it's a fantastic game. I would have loved to have seen a little expansion, maybe one where you are in a flying saucer and then you get to land on a planet and you go planet side. That would be super cool. But as it stands, it's a nice kind of medium-sized box. It's not a huge box, and it has a ton of game. It packs so much into that box. So that is Space Cadets Away Missions. Okay, and then coming up next, another a sci-fi game, and this is the wacky sci-fi, the wacky world of secret unknown stuff. Escape from Dolce, and that is right there. 2018 Sentient Cow Games. We're still waiting on those expansions. I know they were supposed to hit, but I think COVID kind of derailed it. Hopefully there's some new stuff in the works. This game is just wacky fun. If you like all of those crazy kind of MK Ultra, weird Area 51, conspiracy theories, and you want to play a game set in that world of kind of a supermarket tabloid exploitation, that's the game for you. Super fun. You get to take a huge number of different characters like samurais and warriors from throughout different worlds and different lands, and you are raiding Dolce Air Force Base, basically. And Dolce is this underground base that's kind of like Area 51, where they have aliens and UFOs. And it's a really basic game. You move, you draw an encounter card, you face the encounter card. You move, you draw an encounter card, you face the encounter card. That's pretty much the whole game, but it has this big kind of 3D tower that you're moving up, so it has a great table presence. The characters are amazing. The loot is amazing. There's so much loot, and it all does different things, and you have different combinations, and you can level up your characters. The games can be pretty long, like 3 hours, 3.5 hours if you do the whole thing. You can play shorter games, though. There are those little kind of old school D&D module style expansions that are shorter and a lot of fun. But yeah, Secret Unknown Stuff, Escape from Dolce is just pure fun. It's really cool. I love that game so much. The box is huge, and it is a kind of a pain in the butt to get everything back in the box because of that 3D tower. You kind of have to puzzle it back in. You have to hone your Tetris skills to get it to work. But yeah, it's a really cool game. And we have 2 more games to talk about on this runner-up list. And coming up next is Escape the Dark Castle 2017 from Theneborn Limited. I love this game, but I don't like playing it solo. I actually find it really boring to play solo. I never play it solo, and I find it best as a party game. And we always played this game when we got together with my old game group. We would play this at the end of a game session. After we've played a longer, more serious game, we would all be a little buzzed. And we would go through a very deadly game of Escape the Dark Castle. And that was so much fun. Reading the deaths in the death book. Oh, so great. The art, I love the art in this game. It's so bold and just kind of like in your face and sketchy and rough and kind of amateurish, but man, does it have style. And the game is super fun, but I never sit down at my house alone to play this game. I just don't find it fun. I think it's a party game. It's a party dungeon crawl, and it's just sitting around with a group laughing about all of the weird, wacky, wild, and violent and gruesome stuff that happens is so much fun. So that's why it didn't make my top 10, but that is Escape the Dark Castle. And finally, the final game in the runner-up dungeon crawl category is from 2019, and that's from Simon Games, and that is Cthulhu Death May Die. What a great game. And I kind of forget about it. I need to play it more often. And that was the only reason why I didn't consider it for my top 10 until after. I was like, maybe I should have. But it's just a game I don't think about. And I'm not really sure why, because man, is it ever fun. The way you mix those modules, the different episodes together to create a scenario. You have different things. And all of the different investigators are super interesting, and they all have neat powers. I love that kind of pressure luck, kind of a tug-of-war system between keeping your characters sane but making them more powerful. That is super cool. I love all of the mix of the different characters. I love how all of these scenarios, they do focus on these cultists. So it takes a real kind of cult angle from the Cthulhu mythos, and I like that cult angle. And the cultists are always trying to summon one of the great old ones or something, and it's up to your crazy group of half insane investigators to stop them. Again, it is that kind of pulpy nature, that pulp style, that Brian Lumley style of the Cthulhu mythos, like Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, and that's really the style of the Cthulhu mythos that I enjoy the most. And Cthulhu Death May Die is a fantastic game. I can't really say anything bad about it. I know people complain about the tiles being too small for the minis. And while I see that complaint, it really doesn't bother me because that just means that they all fit back in the box easy and they all fit on my table. So for me, that's not an issue. But I do hear that issue repeated quite often. So, all right, so that was the top 10 dungeon crawls, the runners up, and now we'll go on to the adventure games. Okay, the top 10 adventure games, the runners up. Man, even this runners up list was hard to do, guys. I had to really struggle to keep this down to 10. I could do another 10, I could do another 20, and still have games that I love. There's 2 games right now I can see, Seven Moons and Glory. Those aren't on my runner-up, and I like those games a lot. Legends of Andor isn't. Yeah, I mean, I could, I could just go on and on. Elder Sign isn't. The Warhammer Quest adventure card game isn't. A Hero's Journey Home is. I'm just seeing these games just in my view right now that aren't even in my runner-up and aren't on the runner-up list, and I could have put those on there. This is such an amazing category of games. It's a very broad category of games. It's much broader than, it's broad in terms of mechanisms and the board game world, much broader than dungeon crawls. And also the scope of the games are often broader than dungeon crawls. And so just because it's a broader category means that there are more games to be considered. And so it's much harder to make this list. But let's start with, I think, the newest game on the list. Yes, and that is a Freelancers, a Crossroads game from Plaid Hat Games. I love this game. I love it. It is one of Plaid Hat's best games. I love Plaid Hat Games. Some of their earlier games were a little rough, like Mice and Mystics, but even Mice and Mystics has so much charm, and it's really, really good. That early Jerry Hawthorne game. And Aftermath was great. And Familiar Tales, fantastic game. And now Freelancers. They just continue to improve their games, and they have this new one coming out. I'm really looking forward to it. They're actually going to crowdfund. I get it. I wish they wouldn't, but I get it. You can just make so much more money crowdfunding. That's just the way it is these days. And so they need to do that because they went they're no longer owned by Asmodeus, is that the name? Is that how you say it? But they're independent again, and they need to do what they need to do to continue to make their amazing games. And Freelancers is such an amazing game. The only reason it didn't make my top 10 is this: I just haven't played it enough. So I'm not sure if the other scenarios that I haven't played are as good as the ones that I have. But I'm looking forward to playing it more. The writing is good, the app is good, the integration is good, the art is fantastic, the character creation is good. There's really nothing bad I can say about Freelancers. I just need to play it more, and as I play it more, I can easily see this working its way onto my top 10. And see, next up is the game that I bumped off my top 10 because it used to always have a permanent spot, and that is, of course, Talisman. My edition, the one that I like, second edition. They're all great, guys. The Dungeon Dive is 100% against edition wars. If you hear somebody say they like a certain edition of the game and it's not the edition that you like, just say, hey, that's great. I'm super happy. That game rules. Personally, I play this edition, but they're all good. You know, we don't need to go into wars about Arkham Horror 3rd edition, Arkham Horror 2nd edition. I hate edition wars. So the only reason I call out 2nd edition for Talisman is that's the one that I grew up with. That's the one I still have. I will probably buy the new 5th edition to check it out because I haven't bought anything since 3rd edition. My buddy had the 4th and that whole revised stuff. I just never got into that set because I already had my almost complete 2nd edition. But this is the game that, for me, it set the table, it set the standard, it set the foundation of what I look for in an adventure game. Moving around a board, landing on a space, drawing a card, reacting to that card, trying to get loot, trying to get followers and companions, trying to level up your character until you get to the end where you either fight off against another character or a boss or something. I wish there were better solo rules for Talisman. I know in that 4th edition I think there was at least one solo or co-op scenario, kind of a threat management scenario. But I still have fun playing Talisman solo. I play with a bunch of house rules, and I've talked about my house rules. My list of compiled house rules are available in a formatted document for Dungeon Dive patrons. And yeah, Talisman is great. Another reason why I personally play 2nd edition is because of the Gary Chalk art. I love Gary Chalk, growing up with Talisman and the Lone Wolf adventure games. So his art is just very nostalgic for me. And I like when I play Talisman, I'm kind of instantly teleported back to those days when I was in high school and I played it with my group of friends then. And let's see, coming up next is Darkest Night. And the version I have is 2nd edition. That was the only version available when I bought it. It completely replaced 1st edition. I know there are some people that prefer 1st edition. I think they like that kind of has a little bit more of an amateur quality to it, but that's from 2018 and Victory Point Games. So Darkest Night is similar to Arkham Horror in that it is a threat management style game, and it kind of strips away a lot of the elements in Arkham Horror that generate story and really focuses on the threat management. It doesn't have a lot of flavor text. It has a lot of great art. It looks beautiful on the table. It has a gorgeous board. And please, why don't more game companies do this? But it has a full-size board, and then you fold that board in half and turn it over, and it has a shrunken down board for people with smaller tables. I would pay so much money to have a shrunken down board for Arkham Horror, for Eldritch Horror, because those boards are way too big and there's so much empty space. So, oh my God, I love that about Darkest Night 2nd edition. The other thing I love is all of the characters are so different. I think there's something like 27 different characters, and they all have a deck of cards of powers that you can unlock. They feel different. The game is, I think I called it's a game of minute detail and of small steps. On a turn in Darkest Night, you only get one action. You can move, or you can do a thing in your space. That's it. you don't get 2 or 3 actions. You don't have a huge pool of action points. You do something, you do something, you do something, you do something, the board does something. It's a really fast, brisk game. It has a lot of different options where you can tailor the difficulty to make it harder or easier. Yeah, Darkest Night 2nd Edition is great. I know it's out of print right now. I'm hoping somebody picks it back up because I know the prices on it have been going up. And speaking of a new edition coming out, or actually a new kind of complete retheming, but this next game is from 2009, and I'm talking about the Z-Man edition, and that is Tales of the Arabian Nights. And I know there is that Arthurian version coming out, and I'm looking forward to that, and I don't think it's coming through Kickstarter. It's just going to retail. Yay! And that is super cool, and it looks good. But Tales of the Arabian Nights, super fun, big fat adventure book, big fat choose your own adventure book, and a keyword system. And it's one of those games that's just goofy fun. Don't play it to win, play it for the adventure. Don't play it for the destination, play it for the journey, play it for the adventure, because you might try to manipulate what's going on with your character on the table, and you'll make a choice and something crazy happens. You have a sex change, you get turned into a monkey. Who knows what happens to you in that game, but it's always fun if you just go along with the ride. And the games are way too long, but you can play up to only a certain number of victory points and just have a fun time. And yeah, it's just a really fun game. I hadn't played it for a while. I think I did a video on it last year. I played it again, and I was instantly having fun with the game again. And it made me realize that I need to play this game at least once or twice a year. It's so good, so much fun. And that is Tales of the Arabian Nights. Okay, and coming up next is a game that the designer is working on, a huge game right now, absolutely massive. I'm super looking forward to that game. I think it's either going to be amazing, groundbreaking, world-shattering, or it's going to crumble under its own weight. And that game is Ordeal, The Paths We Dare Tread, right? And the game I'm talking about now from Far Off Games is Xia Legends of a Drift System from 2014. A great, big, kind of grand space sandbox game where you are a blue-collar dude in space or dudette in space, and you're trying to take missions, you're mining, you're delivering, you're fighting. You can do whatever you need to do to get those fame points. Even when you roll a 20, when you roll a natural 20 and a D20, hey, you're lucky. You're like Han Solo, you're super lucky. You get some fame for being lucky. Super cool game. I wish, the reason why it didn't make my top 10 is I wish there was one more layer of narrative. There isn't a lot of flavor text in the game, and there aren't a lot of story-driven random encounters, and I think that could really elevate the game. But it's a really solid game. It's super fun to get your ship, upgrade your ship, put different parts in the ship. And playing it solo, you have those NPCs. There are a whole bunch of fan-made expansions for Xia, and I'm going to be exploring those a little bit more, probably next year, maybe later this year, to kind of see what's out there and see what kind of cool things I can add to my games of Xia Legends of a Drift System. And let's see. Okay, next up is a game that almost made my top 10. This was really, really hard to keep off. I'm not sure why it didn't. I can't really think of any reason why it didn't. It probably should have. It's just because the space is so crowded. And that is from 2018 from Rule and Make Games. And that is Hand of Fate Ordeals. Man, Hand of Fate Ordeals. This game should have been a huge, huge, huge hit. The fact that Clank and Thunderstone Quest are huge hits and they continue to be successful while Hand of Fate Ordeals just kind of sank and just kind of people forgot about it, I think is a huge, huge tragedy. Well, not a huge tragedy. I mean, no one died, but you know what I mean. A hobby tragedy. Because this game is a better deck builder than Thunderstone Quest. It's a better deck builder than Clank. I think Clank is a terrible deck builder. It's a better adventure game than both. It has better art than both, better writing on the cards than both. Yeah, it's a better game than both of those games. If you're looking for a deck building adventure game, it just doesn't really get any better than, and you're not looking for an LCG. I don't really care for LCGs at all, like Arkham Horror, the living card game, and the Lord of the Rings living card game. I know those are great. You know, people really love them. They're well made. They're just not for me. Yeah, Hand of Fate Ordeals is great, especially that Kickstarter, that deluxe edition that came with all of the extra stuff, and it had that random mode, that rogue-like mode that I love so much, the endless mode, and that's the mode that I play. I don't really play the campaigns. I don't play the competitive game. I've played the competitive game just once or twice, maybe 3 times, not even a handful of times probably. And the way I prefer is just that endless mode as a solo player, just to see how long I can keep my character alive and how well they can do. And that is Hand of Fate Ordeals from 2018. Fantastic game. Oh, and great art. Man, talk about the art. And we'll be hearing more about the art of Hand of Fate Ordeals in a future video, a very near future video. Okay, coming in next is from 2017 in Fantasy Flight Games, and that is Fallout, and specifically Fallout with the expansions, with the California expansion and the Atomic Bonds expansion, the small expansion that basically fixes the game. Yeah, out of the box, wasn't a great game. I liked it more than most people did, but those expansions greatly elevate the game. It is a great post-apocalyptic game that does have that unique Fallout feel. And I wish they would bring this game back to the forefront, especially with the popularity of the Amazon show. I know people are loving it. I still haven't seen it. And I've heard that the game is getting more and more difficult to find right now, especially the expansions. And I think that has to do with the reception of that TV show. But it's such a good game. The quest system, that big deck of cards, the library of cards, I like that system. I like that Skyrim uses it. I like that Arkham Horror 3rd Edition uses it. And Fallout, I did that big comparison between these 3 games, and they're all fantastic adventure games. Oh man, I just realized I forgot to put Arkham Horror 3rd Edition on this list. That could have been on here as well. And I didn't put Skyrim. Wow. Okay. Like I said, man, this is such a crowded space of amazing games. But yeah, Fallout gives me that Fallout feel. I like exploring the wasteland. I like finding the different vaults and going on those little dungeon crawls. The only thing I don't really like is that the combat is a little fiddly and just never really feels natural. I always forget how to solve combat in that game. But everything else I really like. The questing is super cool, and just it's a neat world to be in. And I think they did a really good job of capturing the uniqueness of Fallout. What makes Fallout different than Mad Max or other post-apocalyptic things? So that was Fallout from 2017. Next up is from 2010 and Eagle Griffin Games, and that is Defenders of the Realm. One of those kind of big post pandemic style games that came out, that threat management, Pandemic was Arkham Horror 2nd Edition with all of the theme, all of the flavor text, all of the story stripped away. And then Richard Launius, I think, kind of responded to Pandemic by making a game that kind of fits in the middle of Pandemic and Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. And that was, of course, Defenders of the Realm. But once you start adding in all of the incredible expansions for Defenders of the Realm, then the game really does feel like this grand, epic adventure game. And I did that series of videos on this game last year, and there was this great resurgence in people talking about this game on the Dungeon Dive Facebook group. And I know that people were buying this game, and it kind of went, people were buying all the expansions because they're having this sale, and things were selling out quickly. And there was a bunch of us just like, oh man, Defenders of the Realm. This game is so much fun. And it's a game that I think a lot of people forgot about. I forgot about it for a while, and I forgot how fun it is. What's really cool about it is when you get all of those expansion heroes, you have so many characters to play. There's got to be 30 or something different characters, and they all feel completely different, and they're super thematic, and you feel like you are these heroes of the lands. The game Defenders of the Realm feels like a Dragonlance game to me, and you are the heroes, but the heroes are off doing individual things, and around them is this great conflict that's going on. the heroes are going on quests for powerful swords so they can kill a general, but you know that these cities are being devastated by these demons and by these orcs and by these undead. And you feel like you are a small but important cog in a great big machine. And I think that's one of the best things about Defenders of the Realm. The art from Elmore is great. It's kind of cheesy, some of it, but man, does it ever sell that Dragonlance, that Dragonlance theme, that kind of Forgotten Realms theme of old D&D. But yeah, it's a classic. I think you could call it a classic game now. It's a classic game of threat management with a great theme and lots of really cool flavor. So that was Defenders of the Realm. Okay, and we got 2 more games. So coming in next is another grand, epic, huge, globe-trotting adventure game. And that is from Flying Frog Productions. And that, of course, is Fortune and Glory from 2011. I know a second edition just came out finally. Maybe we'll finally get those 2 more expansions that have been done for years. I know people are kind of upset about that, but what people need to remember is, okay, Flying Frog Productions, they're a small company and they have a very tight schedule that they have to work on. And when things get bumped around, they can't just move something around for a little bit and then jump back to the schedule. No, things have to get greatly juggled around because they're on such a tight schedule. And so they needed, because of the art in Fortune and Glory, and a lot of art in their other games it's photography, and they're taking pictures of people, and they needed to get people together in costumes and on sets and everything in order to do the photography. But COVID hit, and it just completely disrupted all of their plans, all of their complete docket. And so they had to move things around. And when you do that, you have to schedule stuff. They had to schedule stuff with Kickstarter for the new Shadows of Brimstone campaign. And it really disrupted their schedule. And they're kind of getting back to normal and being able to go back now and kind of backfill and bring that stuff that was disrupted back into production. And unfortunately, Fortune and Glory did fall prey to that. And so that's why these expansions, that's why the second edition have been so delayed, but they are still working on stuff. But if you like things like Indiana Jones, if you like treasure hunting, if you like punching Nazis, if you like punching gangsters and going up against cultists, then man, Fortune and Glory is your game. It's so much fun. It's a cliffhanger game. Fortune and Glory, the cliffhanger game. It has that old cliffhanger serialized feel to it, where you jump for a cliff and you fail that roll and you miss, and then on your next turn you have to pick up on that cliffhanger, and you're hanging on by a thread, and you better make that roll so you can get up. It has a good pressure luck system. It has tons of flavor, tons of theme. I love just traveling around the world looking for treasures, looking for those relics. Super, super fun. And it is a fantastic game. So that is Fortune and Glory. And the final game today is another game from Bedsit Games. And this is probably the most unique game on this list. And that is B-in-1, a board game all about Brighton. And that is the 2022. It's the 10th anniversary edition, I believe. It's the newest edition that he just put out. And this is a game all about having an adventurous day in the city of Brighton. And it's a modern day urban adventure game. And it is so charming. Like Pauper's Ladder, it is incredibly charming. It's incredibly old school. You're rolling and moving. You can augment your movement, or you're playing cards to move, but you can augment your movement. It's not pure luck, but you do move around spaces on an old school looking board. You land on a space, you draw a certain card, and you have an encounter. But because you're in a modern day setting and you're modern day people, you have goals like going to a museum, going to a soccer match or a football match, going shopping. Some of your characters just want to go and they want to buy souvenirs. Sometimes you want to meet the interesting artistic freaks of Brighton. And there are like real people, real Brighton celebrities are depicted in this game. Like, I don't know, like people would have names like, hey, it's Crazy Larry. And Crazy Larry's this guy who sings on the corner. And I'm sure people who live in Brighton know this guy in real life. And he's there in the game. I know it's a game that was pretty popular. It was sold in, in souvenir stores, but I could not imagine going. I just went to Scotland, and if I went into a store and saw this really cool adventure game that was set in Edinburgh or something, or set in St. Andrews, I would love that, especially if it was a game as good as BN1. Hey, Paul, maybe a whole series of games like BN1 set in different cities. That could be super cool. Like these kind of modern adventure games that you could sell at souvenir shops that are actually fun and cool games to play. But it's so charming. I love BN1. I like just exploring that city and going to the different places, going to the museums, going to the docks, buying some souvenirs, buying some food to eat, little meat pies that give you bonuses. Yeah, just super charming, super cute, super fun. Everything that's kind of cool about Pauper's Ladder, but in a modern day urban setting. What more could I ask for? Nothing really. So yeah, so that was the runners up videos, a runners up list, I should say. There are so many. Again, I still struggled with this next 10. There are still games that I had to choose to leave off, and they were very, very hard decisions. And let's just face it, guys, it's an embarrassment of riches to be into board games these days. Whatever your budget, whatever your space, whatever your hobby space, there are games for you. Coming up, I think, well, this video is going to be posted after. So I just did a video that you would have seen. So just recently, I did that video on tabletop dungeon crawls like Fort Against Darkness and Carnathalis. These are small games that you can just buy a book, and all you need is a pad of paper and some dice and a pencil, and you can have a grand adventure on your tabletop. Or you can go crazy and get something like League of Dungeoneers or Fortune and Glory and have a grand epic experience with a whole bunch of components. Whatever level you feel like engaging with this hobby on, there is a game for you. And it really is. It's impossible to keep up. It's impossible to play all the games. It's impossible to play the games I want to play enough to satisfy me, because there's just so many things coming out and so many things competing for our hobby attention. It can be a problem. It is definitely a first world problem. It's not a real problem, but it is a problem. It is something that we have to choose. We have to choose what we spend our time with. We have to choose what we spend our money on. And so hopefully I can, through the Dungeon Dive, I can present to you guys some information that makes that choice just maybe a little bit easier. So, all right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.